I didn't even know it was possible to hate Dion Dublin. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name's Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friend Adam. How are we doing, man?
Yeah, all good. I don't hate Dion Dublin, so that's a good start. Yeah, keeping very well. Busy weekend, treating the missus to her beloved birthday celebration. Had a fun time down the West End of London. But how are
Ooh,
things in Milan, Rory?
very good. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I had a pretty depressing weekend. Well, good. Men's mental health break because Arsenal weren't playing, but then had to watch Crew Alex, and that made me want to kill myself. But apart from that, it was fine. Yeah, all good. Big weekend of FA Cup action. Obviously, lots to talk about. One game in particular I was particularly excited about. But of course, we can't really start the show without talking about that moment on Match of the Day, where some Spurs fan decided to call Dion Dublin a wanker. There was so much to love about this. The fact that the pundits were desperately trying to carry on with their job. So Joe Hart looked genuinely a bit scared. He looked
He did,
like a
didn't he?
bit terrified. And then all of them just continuing, and then Dion Dublin just saying, "Oh, I'll see him in the car park later and sort him out," which was just absolutely brilliant. I love that moment. But I do have to say, on a bit of it, like Joe Hart is a very good pundit. I really like him as a
Yes.
pundit.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of highlights on him for his punditry. It's not the first time, though, Rory, either that I've seen him give like really insightful kind of views. I think he's relatable as well from a kind of player's perspective, and I think adds a different dynamic that potentially we've been missing from those ex-players in
Mhm.
particular. And I think what's been underwritten about Joe Hart's career is potentially the kind of things that he's had to experience. So he's kind of a more all-rounded individual from those experiences, but also, I suppose, from an Ange Postecoglou point of view, he fully knows what is to be expected from that cauldron of Celtic. Knows about that experience
Mhm.
to many respects. So, look. It's an interesting kind of dynamic to see what he can kind of bring, and I think it wouldn't surprise me, Rory, if we see a lot more of him in the near
Mhm.
future.
I thought he really. We'll see how long it takes for Sky to beat out any talent that he has for punditry out of him. But I think
True.
he gave a really interesting perspective on the Kinski goal that we're going to get to. But the
Yeah.
way he explained it and how that mistake happens, well, it wasn't
Mm,
just, oh, yeah, he's had a bad one there. It was like fully, it's confidence. He's trying to do this and he gets.
yeah.
I just thought this is actually insightful punditry that you don't get that often. So I was
Yeah.
very, very impressed with that. So I wanted to give him some flowers because I don't know what my
Mm,
preconceptions were of Joe Hart, but I didn't expect him to be so erudite and kind of interesting. I don't know. So I was very, very surprised and kind of pleasantly surprised by that. Without, if that doesn't sound patronising, I hope it doesn't sound patronising. But for the other story, before we go into the main show, this is kind of pathetic, listeners, but we're trying to pander to our Scottish audience now, and we're going north of the border to see if we can get a positive review. Rangers fans aren't going to like it. What an incredible story. Queen's Park 1, Rangers 0 at Ibrox. I don't know if you saw this, Adam, but the penalty that was never a penalty. That was the softest decision I've ever seen in my life. But the save at the end, it was absolutely unbelievable. And I just thought, those fans that have chosen from Glasgow to support Queen's
mm.
Park and not Rangers or Celtic, no one deserves that more than them, right? That is an incredible moment.
Yeah, absolutely incredible story. Unfortunately, I didn't see the instance in particular, but I did hear about the story itself and the goalkeeper, obviously being kind of a rookie in some respects,
Mm-hmm.
pulling out a great save to keep Queen of the South in it as well against James Tavernier, if I remember rightly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, phenomenal kind of story in that respect because just hampers what's been a disastrous season again for Rangers. And yeah, Scott Arfield is a ex-Rangers player, isn't he? Yeah, couldn't have asked for a better script, right?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And Scott Arfield again in our just a beautiful story. So, kind of a few years ago, a teammate of his, Craig Gowans, died in a really tragic accident on the training ground, and they since retired his number 37 number at
Mm.
Falkirk. Well, Scott Arfield has returned to Falkirk, taken the number 37 number, and in his first game back scored a hat trick. It's
Yes.
absolutely unbelievable story, and just one of those stories that again makes you kind of fall in love with football and realize there are nice stories there, even if you get
Mm.
lost with all the horrendousness. And that story, I really wanted to highlight it because it just made me feel a bit warm inside. And Scott Arfield is a name that I always remember fondly from when he played from Burnley. I always thought he was a half-decent player.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was great to see that. But guys, that's enough preamble. I think there's a lot of magic of the cup to get into. Adam, are you ready for magic?
Let's do it.
Let's go. We'll see you on the other side. And we are back. It's time for the magic of the cup. TM, Plymouth 1, Liverpool 0. Unbelievable scenes. I was kind of worried that we weren't going to get any upsets this week. I don't think Burnley 1, Southampton 0 really counts as an upset. So I was afraid we weren't going to get any. And, well, Adam, we bloody well did. Plymouth, not the typical performance that you'd expect for one of these, like a 1-0 to the lower league team.
No.
It wasn't like Liverpool were battering down the door and the goalkeeper had to make a million saves. No. I feel like Plymouth actually controlled the game relatively well and kind of, it wasn't comfortable, but it was more comfortable than you would expect, right?
Yeah, I think, look, the nature of the cup competition means that these kind of stories can happen. And I think to credit Plymouth, they stuck to a specific style of football. The game plan was to really be direct when they needed to, but also just keep hold of the ball. That was the key kind of frustration point for Liverpool. And you have to say, like, when we were kind of coming to the kind of 90-minute mark, you could see how much effort that the Plymouth players had put out on the pitch. They were getting cramped. They were just really feeling their legs at that point, really tired. But there was some phenomenal performances across the kind of pitch from a Plymouth perspective. And you're right to kind of allude to, there was possibly maybe a lack of quality in the final third. But they got the important goal, which is all that mattered in this kind of aspect. And maybe, Rory, we kind of maybe should call out that maybe Arnie Slot's maybe over kind of expected in the group of players that he had, maybe didn't anticipate Plymouth to put as big a fight against them, and maybe just didn't think the quality of standards of maybe the Championship would be as big as it has been, you know, in terms of matching up to the players that he had on the pitch for Liverpool's perspective. So a lot of credit has to go, obviously, we're going to call them out, is Maxi and Katic in the kind of back line for Plymouth, as well as Conor Hazard. I don't know about you, but I love the post-match reaction from Hazard and Katic, in particular Katic, where he swore on national TV with his raw emotions. But I love the fact that Conor Hazard even alluded to the fact that, obviously, being from the old firm connections previously, he never thought he'd get on with a fellow old firm teammate. So yeah, it had all the hallmarks of a story in the FA Cup, and a lot of credit to Plymouth. But yeah, I think maybe Liverpool underestimated this Plymouth side, it's fair to say.
Well, I think, look, you have to say, like, this is not a good Plymouth team. They are not doing well. They've got the worst defence in all top four divisions. Like, I think everyone had this down as a 4-5-0 win for Liverpool, right, regardless of what team you put out. What I do have to say is, like, I really like this Miron Muslic. The way he comes across is really, really interesting. He seems like a very, like, switched on guy. He already feels like he's got into the feeling of the club, and he can see the side. Like, because Plymouth is a big club, there's a big support. Like, there's no other clubs around there, so you get all the local support, right? There's a lot of, like, I think the atmosphere at the ground was incredible, like, genuinely quite, like, unsettling for the Liverpool players, which is what you want from when you've got, like, when you're a lower league team at home. But I think him being able to get that idea across, and not just like Mikel Arteta with 10 men at Man City, just fucking 11 men on the 6-yard line, but like genuinely trying to, like, you know, pressing at the right time, holding your place, being patient, breaking at the right moment. Like, it was just a really well-disciplined, well-drilled performance. And then when you've got players like Katic and Maxi who are just throwing everything at it, and they're two players that he's brought in since he joined as well, and by all accounts their performances have improved since they've come in, and so he's clearly got an eye for, like, talent and what he needs and what he can do to kind of turn it around immediately and turn it around long term. Because even in the post-match, his comments weren't like, I'm not here just to fix this season. I'm here to fix this club for the next couple of years and see where we can go. So I think I was just really impressed with him and him being able to get this performance out of that team. Connor Hazard was fantastic. That save at the end was unbelievable because if that goes in, you know that Liverpool win in extra time. Like, if that goes in, it's a 2-1 win in Liverpool in extra time. That is the moment where you're like, that's the game winner. And for them to hold on for 9 minutes, well, I'm not sure where they got 9 minutes from, but for them to hold on for 9 minutes was incredible. And we have to talk about the penalty as well. Really well taken penalty, like a really, really well taken penalty. Kept his head. I'm not sure what Harvey Elliott was doing with his hands in the air there, trying to make an early save. But thankfully, we didn't need VAR for that one. But even more thankfully, the ref got it right and called it. But it was as clear a penalty as you're ever going to see, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what he was doing with his hands in that position. He clearly thought he was running his youth days again, maybe playing some volleyball. But it was in the wrong position, definitely penalty. And thankfully for Plymouth, didn't have to worry about the referee on this occasion. And he got the decision right. So I suppose my question to you would be, do you think Liverpool will be gutted that they're out of this competition? Because I think everything was kind of geared up for a potential quadruple, the way they were going about the business anyway this season so far.
Look, I think this is one of those things, and I put it on our Twitter account. I was like, this game is important up until you lose it, and then it's not important. It was all the fans were like, oh, well, the focus wasn't the FA Cup anyway. But if they'd have gone through, they'd have been going on about the quadruple, right?
Yeah, of course
like
they would.
Every fan base in the world does, right? I'm not saying it's Liverpool fans. It's just every football fan. I think this game is important up until the point where the final whistle goes. And then, yes, Liverpool do have other things to focus on. They do have the league. They do have the Champions League. They do have the League Cup. But there's not a part of me that thinks that Arne Slot and those players aren't pissed off that they've gone out. Like, they would have been looking at that and going, Arsenal have gone out. They would have sat and watched, Spurs go out a couple hours later. And you're looking at these bigger teams that are falling. You're going, okay, maybe our name is on this cup. Maybe it's there for us to win. So I think they will be really, really pissed off that they've not got through. And especially in the way that they've done it. Now, I think I just thought it was really sloppy from Liverpool. A lot of the passes were just not off. The first touch wasn't there. I thought the front line in general was pretty underwhelming. I'm not sure, and maybe this is because we're the Anglo-Italian pod, but I'm not sure why Chiesa got called out more than any other player. I thought he was one of the few attackers that his final ball might not have been fantastic, but he was direct. He was trying to make things happen. I think he affected the game much more than Jota or Luis Diaz, but for some reason, the BBC or ITV decided to call him out. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
But in general, I feel like the performance was really just sloppy. And do you think this is mainly because it's a team that none of these players are playing regularly? Then you put all of them in a team together. So not only are they not playing regularly, they're not playing together regularly. And then that's how you end up with this level of sloppiness. Or do you think it's also a bit of complacency? Because I just saw they were knocking on the door, but there was never really that they're going to score now moment, apart from that save at the end.
I think there's a bit of naivety on Slot's part as well, to be fair. I would have said, when you're in a circumstance where you have to rotate the squad as much as he did for the day, you always kind of just make sure you kind of put a few of your first team 11 on the bench just to be 100% sure. You don't have to bring them on, but just to kind of have them as an option if scenarios like this happen. And I think, like you allude to, there's a lot of those players that haven't had much game time. Even the likes of Federico Chiesa, he hasn't had much game time at all. If anything, he appeared in the previous round against Accrington Stanley and scored, but obviously he hasn't had that exposure to the English league as much as, say, some of the other players. I think there's also, like you say, just the fact that they haven't played together. I mean, there's a few youngsters in that mix as well, which, that's a big test for these kind of players. I just think Arne Slot got the kind of selection wrong. Alongside, I think, to an extent, maybe the tactics as well. I think they expected it to be straightforward for them by just kind of going quite attacking. And actually, they got caught out on a number of occasions when it came to counterattacks as well. So I think they probably didn't anticipate maybe Plymouth to be also direct in the way that they were going to go about the business, getting up to the kind of final third. There's a number of elements, I would say, Rory, that probably played a part. But predominantly for me, I think Arne Slot learnt a lot from this. I think he was just naive with his picks.
Yeah, I know that like you're looking at like Liverpool have played a lot of games recently. They've just played Spurs Thursday night. They're just coming into this now. But I think you have to have a Salah on the bench. You have to have
Yeah.
just the chances of him. He's probably going to need to come on for 5 minutes, right? 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're in this kind of situation, you throw him on. Plymouth shit themselves. He gets one, and then you win in the extra time, right? Like, and I think so. Just having them on the bench, I think he kind of got that wrong there. But then I look at that team, and that team should still be good enough to beat bottom of the championship. Like it just should be. So I think as much as
Yeah,
Slot
it should.
does take some of the blame, I think the players on the field also need to think about how they underperformed so badly. I also think there's a really interesting
Yeah.
undercurrent happening here of how Slot feels about his attackers, because there's already rumours that he's not happy with Luis Diaz and Jota. I think any body language expert can tell you he doesn't particularly like Darwin Núñez. And there's kind of a question now of, does he trust these attacking players now when they need to come off the bench and get a win when it comes to kind of squeaky bum time later in the season? Is the depth in attack there? Like, we know that Jota is still like a killer. His finishing is unreal in general, but in this game and in the last couple of, over this season, he hasn't really had much of effect. I know he's been injured as well, but like, do they have a bit of an issue in attacking depth in form? Like, without going over the top, I think Luis Diaz is still obviously a very good player, but I look at Jota and Chiesa and I think, are they going to get you goals later on in the season?
Potentially. I think already maybe Arnie Slot's kind of had his kind of understanding of this group of players now and maybe thinking towards the future. It would not surprise me if we start seeing maybe a bit of an exodus in the summer. I appreciate there was a lot of noise that it's likely to be like Trent, Salah and Virgil van Dijk that were kind of on that kind of list, but I think there's potentially more. Would not be surprised if the likes of Chiesa only lasts till the end of season and then he's back in potentially a different club. With Jota, as you alluded to, his injuries kind of process, he seems to have a lot of them, which impacts the season when he is playing. Obviously, he's an influential member of the squad, but the amount of injuries, I think now it's getting to a point where it's just so consistent that they need to think about someone that is going to last a lot longer. And Luis Diaz is an interesting one. I think that's been courted for a long time that he might potentially move from Liverpool maybe to sunnier climates was always the rumour. But now it seems formidable from my point of view that it looks like he's going to be potentially one on that list. So I think potentially Liverpool needed this as well to help with the rebuild structure at Liverpool, because I think there's a number of positions that they'll need to recruit for the future, not just for now. And yeah, I think Arnie Slot is going to make his final mark in the summer. So interesting period given the kind of relative successes up until this point. I think that's the only thing that I'd allude to, though. It's only relative because they haven't actually got over the line yet. So still a hell of a lot of football to play. And yeah, let's see what happens. But yeah, he's going to have to try and inspire this group of players to maybe do it for one last dance, as they say.
Yeah, well, it definitely feels like, I think Liverpool will win the league this year, but when they do, it's kind of the sign off of that team, and then he's in charge to take over to build the next one, right? And yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping Arsenal ruin it all, obviously, but I'm more in hope than expectation. Yeah. I'll be honest. But we do have to say, congratulations to Plymouth, incredible win for them, and they've been treated to a trip away to the Etihad, which will be exciting for them. Liam Gallagher, I saw, was tweeting Plymouth, and the Plymouth official account have come back to him. So he got the tie he wanted, which is nice for him. And who knows? We've seen that Man City are pretty get-atable. So if Plymouth go for the throat, we'll never know. Maybe they can get it done. So we're going to go to the next game that we're going to talk about today, and that is going to be Aston Villa 2, Spurs 1. The misery continues for Tottenham Hotspur. I'm not sure how this was only 2-1. Adam, it feels like Aston Villa should have got 5 or 6 here.
100%, yeah. I think obviously a lot was made out of the kind of debuts for the likes of Marcus Rashford and Marco Asensio. And what a fantastic debuts they both had. They kind of slotted in seamlessly. By all accounts, didn't really have much of a kind of impacts in terms of like training. But, they came on as substitutes in this game. And I think it's really quite telling how Ange Postecoglou had to defend his players again at post-match to kind of allude to the fact that they are on the bare bones, but I think that excuse is getting a bit tired now, Rory. There were some really pathetic performances from a Spurs perspective, but a lot of credit goes to Villa because they took advantage. They played the better football. Like you say, they probably should have scored a lot more. Morgan Rogers, as well as Tielemans, playing really crucial parts. Daniel Marlon, kind of with his pace, dragging out defenders. And although he didn't have much of an impact, Jacob Ramsey and the likes of Leon Bailey were able to take advantage as well. So I think it was a fantastic performance across the pitch. I think there were some nervy moments from Villa from a defensive point of view, but that was only on the rare occasions that Spurs actually threatened, and I don't think they did enough of that, to be fair. So a lot of credit to the way that Villa went about it. I think they looked comfortable, to be honest, even by the time Spurs had scored that solitary goal. I think it was that bit of quality that Spurs had been lacking all game. But I mean, for Spurs this season, that's again another cup competition exit. They've only got one more to go on to before we get to a point of we're still a Premier League club, and I don't know how long that will last for with this form. I appreciate they're saying that players will come back to the fold, and don't get me wrong, that's fine. But they still got to find some form as well once they come back. They've got to get their match fitness, their sharpness up as well. So I think this is already gearing itself up for a final day. We might have to win just to stay up kind of vibes. It's looking really tough, and at that point, is Big Ange still in the role? I don't know, but I don't think the Spurs fans at this point really care. The majority of them have kind of switched off. They're kind of conceded to the fact that this is their situation right now, and it's been caused by not this season, but a number of seasons kind of mismanagement from Daniel Levy and co. But I think, Rory, you wanted to talk about Villa and potentially could they be outsiders to the FA Cup?
I think this has got to be their year where they go for it. Honestly, I think they have to put I know they're on they're still in the Champions League. They're still aiming for European qualification next year. They've got a lot on their plate, right? They've got a lot on their plate. But Unai Emery is a great cup manager. He's fantastic in cup competitions, apart from when he's at Arsenal. I think he can really push this team to go and pick up the FA Cup. The attacking depth that they've added, because they already had quite a few options, right? And now they've lost Jahan Duran, and you think, okay, well, that's going to be a big miss. But no, we just brought in Rashford and Marcus Asensio, and all of a sudden you're thinking. Also, there's a really interesting thing that Unai Emery has only been positive about Rashford since he came in. Now, I know I'm not expecting Unai Emery Rashford to walk through the door and be like, this guy's shit. I know that it's not but he's been super positive about the way he's training and his attitude. He's like, right, let's get this guy switched on. And I really, really hope this pays off. And Unai Emery, his man management, gets him through and brings the most out of Rashford. I thought he looked really lively when he came on. He was very unlucky not to get a penalty free kick when he nutmegged Pedro Porro, and the guy just Pedro Porro getting embarrassed on a weekly basis.
Pedro Porro.
I'm absolutely here for it. But that should have been a penalty or free kick. I'm not sure how. Yeah. It was right on the line, but it was a massive foul. But Rashford looked really good. The only issue for Villa at the moment is they've got no fit centre-backs. The one centre-back they had fit was Konza, and he went off in the 27th minute. So they need to figure out the centre-back crisis and how they're going to fix that. Yeah. But I think this is a year where Villa can really go for it, because there's no team left in that competition where I think home or away, Villa are going to be scared of them. If Villa drew City away, I'm saying Villa are going to win that, right? If Villa draw United, I'm saying Villa are going to win that. So I think they've really got to push for this and be like, this is a year for them to do something huge. And I think they can do it whilst still competing in the Premier League and the Champions League. Because, okay, they've had issues post-Champions League. Their results haven't been as good in the Premier League the match after. But like I said, with a bit of depth they've added, I think there's just so much quality there. And again, the defence needs sorting. But I also have to talk about Morgan Rogers. I cannot believe every time I watch him, I'm like, why did Man City let him go? I know they let Cole Palmer go, and you can ask about that. But I think the bigger fumble is letting Morgan Rogers go. I think more consistently, Morgan Rogers is outstanding. I think Palmer has the odd game where he catches the eye, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's unreal. Every time I see Rogers, he runs the game. He just dominates. He progresses the ball. He shoves people out of the way. His close control is insane. His pass to set up Ramsey is an incredible pass for the first goal. It's just perfect on his toe. I think every time I watch this guy, I'm like, unbelievable. I'm so jealous Villa have him, just getting to watch him every week. Honestly, I think the guy's unbelievable. And it was another amazing performance from him. And I thought Daniel Marlon looked really lively. Like another one they've added in for a bit of depth. He was causing Spurs all sorts of problems. Now we'll get to their defence, but he was causing Spurs all sorts of problems. And like he just looked like a constant threat. And now I'm looking at him going, why did Arsenal let him go? Like, but he looked really, really dangerous. A great result for Villa. And yeah, I'm really hoping they push on and win it because I think they genuinely could do it. I think they're kind of in such a good place at the moment. But for Spurs, I'm going to try to be nice. I think Ange genuinely does have, like, he has a point. Like, these are the same 11 players playing twice a week. Like, how much can they really run? Like, he absolutely has a point. But I still can't not go back to the fact of like, yeah, but then you have to change what you're asking them to do. If you know they're exhausted and they can't press and they can't do the high line because they're playing twice a week, and you're saying this out loud and you're going, this is the problem, they don't have the energy to do it. Okay, well then change what they need to do. Try 100%. And do something that maybe you switch to counter-attacking football. You switch to, drop a little bit deeper and catch teams on the break. Have 10-minute periods in the games where you rest your legs a little bit. Whatever it is, yes, it's one of the worst injury crises a team has had in Premier League history. Like, it's genuinely a terrible injury crisis. But the manager isn't helping them at the same time because I think you just have to tweak it a little bit. Or maybe a lot of it. I don't know. Maybe you have to tweak it a lot and just go for the next couple of weeks just to get through this. We need to change what we're doing because ultimately you're setting them up to fail if you're asking them to do a high intensity press and your defensive line at the halfway line if they're all knackered.
Well, this was the kind of big topic after the match itself amongst the kind of, analysers, essentially the likes of Dion Dublin, Jermaine Defoe and Joe Hart. They were talking about it needs certain characters now within that dressing room to stand up and kind of make an issue of it and kind of bring the players together almost and kind of trying to address the situation outside of Ange's kind of hands, really. So I think there's a bit of maturity needed within the squad itself. It feels like, and I think it's been called out previously, that there is a lack of leadership within that kind of group of players. And I think a lot is expected of the likes of maybe a Son, for example, who's maybe more experienced within the camp. But I think when it comes to leadership, it's only a certain amount of people that have that or crave that kind of leadership. And I think it's very evident on the pitch for me, Rory, when you see the likes of Archie Gray or Bergvall. They're the players that want to do something. They're trying to do things and they're trying to practice what Ange Postecoglou is trying to, get this kind of culture within the squad to take place. But the rest of the players aren't on board, it feels. It feels like they're playing with limitations. And to your point, I think, Ange has got to work a way that works best for that group of players. And it is down to the pragmatics of his approach. I think that's the issue that we've got, is that stumbling block of it's my way or the highway. He won't kind of change. He's already alluded to that factor. And I don't want to dwell on that too much because that's so boring now. But we are at a point now where it was interesting for me actually to hear this, that Ange said that he's going to give the players 3 days off because they are so knackered, relating to the fact that, on that Thursday night when they played Liverpool, they didn't finish until 2 p.m. They didn't get to their beds until 2 p.m. that next day. So for me, like, that is clearly a practice that they've been trying to do, is after game, they must be doing training the very next day or a day after. So they're not actually doing their players any good. And that's probably why they've had this horrendous kind of injury run, is because the players are just at a point where they need to be managed proper. They need to be, managed in such a way that actually, if you've got back-to-back games, you're going to have to plan out that there's only 1 or 2 days in the week where you can actually practice. You can't be expected to do it every day and just expect them to recover as normal. They've got to have some mental space as well. And I think maybe that was alarming for me to hear that Ange hasn't actually implemented that. He hasn't practiced that. And I wonder if it's just the intensity of Ange and his style of football has drained it out of the players. And I think, I don't know, I just feel like I remember stories of the likes of Jose Mourinho and Alex Ferguson and even Arsene Wenger talking about having to manage these players and not seeing them for very often, but he had to do it to enable them to be fresh. And I think that's possibly an element of Ange's kind of management skills that he hasn't been used to potentially, and maybe it's coming to roost.
Really badly timed sneeze. Sorry. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But I need to remember what I was going to say there. What do you say? Fuck's sake, the sneeze distracted me. No, but as regular listeners will know, I don't profess to know a lot about Scottish football. But from what I remember, he had a lot of injury issues when he was at Celtic as well. It was just that at Celtic you could get away with it because the level maybe is not as high as the Premier League. Whereas with Spurs, when you in the Premier League, if you miss 3 or 4 players, it makes a huge difference to the level of your squad. It makes a huge difference to your 100%. Results, and therefore it becomes a huge problem. So I think this is an issue that he's had at past clubs, and it could be something to do with the way he trains or their whatever. Yeah, their kind of attitude towards training or what he asked them to do in training is what's causing them these problems long term. But it's definitely something that needs looking at. But I do feel for him because it is the same players are going to have to play at the weekend. It's going to be the same lot. Like, I don't know if 2 or 3 do come in, then you're right. They also have to play themselves into form as well. It's not going to be an instant quick fix. Like, there's going to be 2 or 3 games, get themselves, warmed up again and back into the flow. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes with Spurs. I dare say the Europa League isn't realistic for them. I didn't think it was anyway, even with a full fit squad, but I dare say it's probably not realistic now. But I do expect him to be there at the end of the season. I expect him to even be in charge at the beginning of next season, to be honest. I think they're going to, because of the unprecedentedness of this injury crisis, I think they're going to give him the summer to rebuild and then see if he can have another crack at it. But if he starts badly again next season, then I think we need to be having we will be having this conversation again. So I look forward to that. I don't know about you, Adam. You looking forward to that? I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Let's bring it on.
But let's leave that game. Let's leave that game there. I don't know what happened to my voice there. Aston Villa, fantastic 2-1 win. And we're going to head over to the Theatre of Screams, Old Trafford, Manchester United 2, Leicester City 1. I'm not sure how any of this happened. Adam, I know Leicester are a bad team, and I know they're having a bad season, and, but how far on Mars would your head be as a Leicester fan with that last minute, not only a last minute winner that was offside, but it's Harry fucking Maguire who gets it?
And the fact that it was blatantly offside, right? It's just
incredible.
Like how that was missed, I just don't understand it. And it just goes to show you how unlucky they were for this game. But unfortunately, also, probably another wider question is why does it take a goal from the opposition before Man United kickstart the game itself and actually decide to turn up? Yeah, it's dreadful from both sides in many respects. But from a Leicester City point of view, you're probably gutted that he didn't go on to try and win this game. I don't know what you can put it down to because you look at the XG and it's just, it's crazy when you think about it. Leicester had 13 shots on goal as well. It's a terrible kind of way to go out is what I would say, Rory. And you got credit, I think, the substitution of Garnacho. I think that really did put a bit more of a direct kind of aspect to their game. It surprised me that he still finds himself on the subs bench, but clearly there's a disliking with him, and it's a personal thing because otherwise you wouldn't have been trying to sell him in the January transfer window for me. So for me, it's a shame because I think he's actually one of the bright spots for Man United. And I'm surprised actually maybe more Premier League sides didn't want to take him up because I think that's an astute kind of player potentially in the future. I'm not saying for now, but definitely someone that could be grounded into a really good player. But I think it just highlights the issues at Man United again. I'm afraid, Rory, it doesn't really hide over the cracks. It's a good result in the grand scheme of things, gets them into the next round. But Rory, I don't know what more you can say about this.
I think the Garnacho point is quite interesting. I think There was something he's done a few things on social media where I think, oh, you might be like the main, like you think you're the main character, and I think maybe he
Yeah,
did a thing where he posted him celebrating a goal that was eventually chalked off for offside in a game that United lost. I'm pretty sure I haven't imagined
yeah,
that, and I think
yeah,
there's a few things where you think, oh, maybe either your agent or whoever is advising you or you. Or I get that there's just a slight feeling that it would be complicated having him at your club. Fantastic player, really exciting. But I wasn't massively surprised when Amarim was like, yeah, he can leave. Like, it didn't massively surprise me. But then, you have to turn to him when the game's going against you, and he's kind of a big part of what fishes you out of it. And you're like, oh,
yeah.
fuck, maybe I need to eat some humble pie here. But I think it's an interesting point there. I think this kind of, not even social, this psycho experiment of Ruben Amorim at Manchester United, watching him completely collapse as a man throughout this reign, and he's not been there that long. What is it? 3 months, 4 months? He
Yeah,
took over
roughly.
just before Christmas, right?
Yeah, just before Christmas.
Like, he is not having fun. I think he walks like, it feels more to me now, even though his record is worse than Ten Hag's. They're really not doing well at all. I know they've
No.
won this game, and we have to say they won this game, but his record is terrible, but still somehow it feels like he walks away before he gets sacked, and I'm not sure why. Because I think he looks so fucking miserable, and he keeps calling out the players, just telling them the shit. Like, it can't be sustainable, this, right?
It's not sustainable, but I think he's maybe been talked into a role that maybe he thought he could turn around, and he could maybe, there's been some promises behind the scenes. I mean, you only have to look at the January transfer window and the fact that Rashford was moved on, but no attackers came through. I look at that and I kind of go, there's your cost cutting exercise done. Then clearly for this period of the season, there doesn't seem to be much that he can cling on to now going forward, and he's got to sort of hope that he can build something with these group of players. I appreciate they brought in Dorgu, but again, he's not the answer to the whole question mark around Man United and the way they play. And it's interesting how, I don't know if you get this perception, but he seems to play better when they're away from home than they do when they're at home, and it's clearly a factor that's hanging over this squad. I don't know if it's Ruben Amorim also maybe just struggling with the kind of expectation that's required at Man United. Don't forget, he's been used to a smaller club in Sporting Lisbon. I'm not saying they're not big, but certainly smaller in the grand scheme of things when you compare it to Man United and the expectation levels anyway. So for me, I just think he's gone into a role that he thought he could change, but actually he's got into the nooks and crannies and realised there's a deeper issue down there. And I think culturally he's trying to shift it, but you can see he's getting tired already. And it feels at the moment like they're no better than they were under Ten Hag, which is weird because we kind of week upon week talks about the fact that Ten Hag, there was no identity, there's no style of football. But I couldn't really tell you what they're trying to do apart from he's trying to ensure that there's back three or back five at times. And, they're trying to progressively play, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like they've got no connections within that group. They're relying on certain individuals to get them out of it as well, Rory. I don't know.
I can see. No, I can. I think I'm going to stick up from a bit. I can see what his idea is. I can see what his philosophy is. I can see what he's trying to do. I think he's a much better leader than Erik Ten Hag. He's much more, even though he's calling the players shite every other week, I feel like he's much more inspiring than Erik Ten Hag ever was. I think there is more about him than there was at Ten Hag, and you can see clearly what his plan is. He just doesn't have the personnel at the moment. And you're also right, he's waking up to what the issues are within that club and the battles he's having to fight on a daily basis, I imagine, are really fucking tiring. But I think there is eminently more of an idea when I see Manchester United play than I ever saw under Ten Hag in the 18 months he was in charge, whatever it was. I can see what he's trying to get at. But it's the same question that we talked about, like you said. Okay, it's all well and good to beat Arsenal in a big game on penalties or to get the draw against Liverpool or whatever it is, but it's these games at home that you're expected to win. You've got to win them. And I have to remind myself, they did win this game, but they shouldn't have won this game, right? They won this game from a goal that should never have been allowed, and in any other game wouldn't have been allowed. So it's kind of a win in name only. But this is where the test is now, and this is where the test continues to be, is, as you said, at home, when you have to be the main character, you have to be the protagonist in the game. How are you going to do this, and how are you going to put your footmark, your fingerprint, your footprint, whatever, on the game? And they're not able to do it. I think it's just really fascinating what's happening at Manchester United. But I think he will be there next season. He will get more time in the summer. I think he has been shafted in terms of his attack, though, because neither Højlund or Xerxes are working, and now there is only two options. And I think he must be looking at just going, Christ, like, where am I getting a goal from here? Like, where realistically, if Ahmad has an off day, who else is scoring? If you know what I mean. So I think, grim times. For Leicester, they must just be, I can't imagine how angry they were, because from the other end of that ground, from the away end, I'm pretty sure they would have been able to see that was offside, because that's the most blatant offside I've ever seen in my life. And it did kind of make me realise, sometimes we look back and think, like, the days before VAR get romanticised a bit, and then you look at that and you're like, you know what? that didn't used to happen every week, but it happened not often enough.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, maybe it is better to have VAR overall. It's a better thing, because shit like that doesn't happen otherwise. But those are the main headlines in the FA Cup this week. We are going to take you through some honourable mentions, so don't worry if you've not been mentioned yet. You're getting your turn now. Jamie Donnelly robbed of an all-timer goal as he absolutely pinged one from the halfway line against Man City. Sometimes, just don't stick by the rules. It's not an own goal. It's a thunder bastard. He deserves that. His name should be in FA Cup history. We're going to fight his corner, but what a hit that was. Man City rescued towards the end through De Bruyne. I really liked Guardiola's reactions to him getting followed around the country with people saying you're getting sacked in the morning. And him like, well, at least this result will mean I'm not getting sacked tomorrow, which is a rare moment of, sense of humour from Pep that I really enjoyed. Brighton beat Chelsea 2-1. Chelsea on a horrendous run of fixtures. Maresca running out of ideas, maybe. I saw Chelsea fans online this week missing Mikhailo Mudryk. Adam, they are down. They are deep down. Like, they're really struggling right now. But should Chelsea fans be concerned? I think it's 6 games without a win now, right?
Yeah, it's not looking too pretty. I think it's generally just the lack of ideas and the fact that just not changing of the squad personnel, in particular for those that aren't performing. I'd allude to the fact that Robert Sanchez as well being a key culprit when it comes to that kind of call out of players that aren't performing on a regular basis. But obviously, I think there's deeper issues at Chelsea, and so, it's just not working out for Maresca. I think he'll be given till the end of the season before they make a decision, but I think inevitably it feels like he might be the next one out of the door come the summer anyway.
More change at Chelsea, just what they need. Good. Brighton, incredibly inconsistent. I think you can just throw a dart in a board and see what Brighton performance is going to come out at the minute, because it just frig knows what's going on at that club. But a big win for them. It keeps them in the hat. Elsewhere, what else? Birmingham pushed Newcastle. That was a pretty entertaining goal. No goal line technology for a fairly contentious goal, non-goal here. But Newcastle eyeing up 2 cup runs potentially. Did you know, Adam, this was Callum Wilson's debut in the FA Cup for Newcastle? How mental is that?
That is insane, but then I also think he's probably been injured for most of that time, so that probably makes sense.
He's been there 5 seasons, I think. This is his first game in the FA Cup for Newcastle. It's fucking mental.
Wow. It is mental.
Blew my mind,
I just think he is always injured.
Insane. Marcus Edwards scoring for Burnley in his return to English football to knock out Southampton. Frig me, it's grim at Southampton. But we have to talk about, Adam, Burnley's mental defensive record at the moment.
Yes. Yeah, they've got an absolutely insane record at the moment in terms of what they do in the Championship as well, because they've only conceded 9 goals all season. So it's absolutely phenomenal. But
Arrigo Sacchi somewhere is crying with tears of pride.
Let me just go through the last 5 games. So obviously you've got Southampton. They beat Oxford United 1-0. They drew with Portsmouth 0-0. They drew with Leeds United 0-0. And they beat Plymouth 5-0. So just to add to that mix, by the way, Rory, they've only scored 37 goals. So 5 goals against Plymouth almost coming close to a quarter of their season total. Yeah, fun times to be a Burnley fan, and they find themselves in third position. So just 3 points off Sheffield United as it currently stands.
Absolutely incredible defensive record. Fair play to Scott Parker. I tell you, I didn't have him down as, a modern day Arrigo Sacchi, but clearly he's nailing it. Clearly he's nailing it. Southampton, everything about that club at the moment just looks absolutely dead. Horrendous for them. And then my favourite story of the week, I've been looking forward to this, Aaron Ramsey returning to the Britannia to wave at all the locals, them waving with 6 fingers, him waving with 5, and he rattled them all completely. The fact that club still hate a man for having his leg broken by their centre-back sums up everything about that club and City. I don't care who I upset with this, because my views on Stoke are fairly hardline. I hate everything about them. And I just really, really enjoyed Ramsey being able to not only knock them out on penalties, but have a nice little victory lap. That must have felt so good. Can you imagine? He looked absolutely delighted. And Cardiff City Twitter, I've been really enjoying it this week. It was absolutely fantastic, right?
Especially when you've got a fan base that have very low disregard for what you've suffered. It's amazing to think they still got this beef with Aaron Ramsey, but fair play to Ramsey. He lapped it up, he enjoyed himself, and got one over them. So you got to love it.
Delicious. I did put it in the Arsenal Milan supporters WhatsApp group this weekend. Like, boys, just sit and watch this for a couple of minutes and just enjoy it, because karma, it takes a while, but it always comes back. It always comes back. Absolutely love that. Stoke are out the cup. Lovely. And they're not going to be trouble in the Premier League anywhere anytime soon, so don't need to worry about them. But that was the FA Cup roundup. Oh, and Semenyo scored an insane penalty against Everton. Incredible run up there. Very maverick, having a hell of a season, that guy. But that does mean that the legs that we have coming up, we have Aston Villa hosting Cardiff City as Anwar El Ghazi gets to return to Villa. Already seen him on Twitter, very excited about that. And Manchester United hosting Fulham. Man United will somehow score 4 and go through. I'm not sure how, but their name seems to be on the cup. We have Ipswich and Millwall is to be decided. So I think that's either Palace. That's between the Palace game that's going on now.
Yes,
I think
correct.
Newcastle will be hosting Brighton. Bournemouth will be hosting Wolves. Preston will be hosting Burnley in the Glamour-tie. And then Manchester City will be hosting Plymouth. Very quickly, Adam, can Plymouth do it again? Do you reckon they can do it?
I think it's a step too far, personally. I think it's a step too far. I'd love them to do, if it was at home park, 100% all of the time, but I just think it's a step too far.
We will see. We will see. We're all green army, right? Remember that advert? Yeah, good. Nice. So we are going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be previewing the one Premier League game this midweek and looking forward to the next weekend. And we are back. I'm officially sending in my application to become an Everton fan. Boo, boo. I think that's the first step past.
First
so
requirement.
I'm fully an Everton fan this week as Everton take on Liverpool on Wednesday night, 8:30 kickoff European time. Adam, this is an absolutely huge game. David Moyes' record against Liverpool was actually always fairly decent. It was a long time ago, but it's all about nostalgia. It's all about bringing back the good times. Can the Moyes do it? I'm pretty excited, if you can't tell.
This could be a very big game in the grand scheme of things. This last one at Goodison Park, obviously from a derby perspective. And I think David Moyes gets it. He gets the importance of this game. We did joke offline that maybe David Moyes did chuck that last FA Cup match to the side because he wants to concentrate on this particular game. And I think David Moyes will make note of what happened midweek and kind of say, look, we're not expecting to see the same team turn up here as well. I'm expecting there to be a lot of fireworks. I think, David Moyes will get them in the right frame of mood in terms of like the application. But more importantly, he's got to work out how to outdo this Liverpool side who, on the counter, I think will be frightening against this Everton side. But look, I think Everton can make the most of it, especially when it comes to being in the kind of direct line of that central defence. I think also from set pieces is going to be where Liverpool will be tested. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities to get at this Liverpool team. But I do worry that there is a little bit more quality on the Liverpool side of things. So inevitably, it does feel like there'll be a score draw here, Rory. It just feels like there will be lots of goals and potentially it'll be ending up as a draw. But I think secretly, we're all Everton fans just for this one last time at Goodison Park.
Some of us less secretly than others, but yeah, no, I absolutely think. No, I think it's absolutely vital that Everton just don't concede in the first. It sounds obvious to say, but just don't concede early. Keep it really tight at the beginning, and then build from there. And I think if you get that atmosphere, the atmosphere at Goodison Park is going to be absolutely rocking for that game.
100%.
I really, for a while, and it's probably just blind optimism and faith in a higher power, I have thought something will happen here where it won't all go Liverpool's way. But that being said, it'll be 4-0 Liverpool now, and Salah will get 3, and everyone will go, okay, well, there's that done. But I do, yeah, I'm pinning quite a lot of my sanity to this game. So we'll see how that goes. Elsewhere, carrying on to the next weekend, we've got some pretty big games, Adam. Do you want to take us through the games and we can kind of talk about one or two of them?
Yeah, sure. So we start off on Friday evening, and this isn't a misprint here, guys, but Brighton do host Chelsea once again, 8 p.m. That is the kickoff time. Should be another feisty affair, it's fair to say, Rory. We'll take you through first the Saturday game. So Saturday the 15th, and at 12:30, Leicester City host Arsenal. Before at 3 p.m, we've got a whole host of games here, Rory. Aston Villa start off taking on Ipswich Town. Fulham at home to Nottingham Forest. Then we've got Man City at home against Newcastle United. Southampton at home to Bournemouth, before we also see West Ham at home to Brentford. And then the 5:30 kickoff time, that's the very same day, we've got Crystal Palace at home to Everton. Before on Saturday, we've got a few big games here. Liverpool at home to Wolverhampton Wanderers. That's the 2 p.m. kickoff time. And then at 4:30, the relegation 6-pointer, should we say, Spurs at home to Manchester United. So, Roy, sport for choice, it feels. What is your big pick from these group fixtures?
I think the one that catches my eye, and I'm surprised it's a 3:00 kickoff, is Man City Newcastle when they've put Palace Everton at the 5:30. I'm just surprised. I know there's contractual obligations, but I'm really surprised that's a 3:00 kickoff. I think Man City Newcastle is going to be a fascinating one because Man City obviously really, really vulnerable at the moment. Newcastle got their tails up a bit post, Dr. Arsenal coming in and helping them, and now this FA Cup win as well. I think Newcastle will not be afraid to go toe-to-toe with Man City and that midfield battle. Up close and personal, I saw, how dangerous that Newcastle midfield can be. And with Man City's midfield woes, I think that could be a complete mismatch if Bruno and Joelinton and Tonali, more importantly, are all on it. I think that could be a big win for Newcastle there. But Adam, what about Spurs United? How are you feeling about that one? Two managers under massive pressure. Both of them hate their players equally. How do we see this one going?
I think it might actually go the way of Man United, the way it's going for Spurs and Man United, respectively. I just feel there's something more about this Manchester United group of players that can get a result at Tottenham. And I think that's probably more a kind of reflection of where Tottenham are at this moment in time, that, despite it potentially being more favourable to them at this moment in time, a draw would be probably more handsome for them, but yeah, it just feels at this moment in time that Man United have got the opportunity to take all 3 points. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go score draw. I'm gonna say it's gonna be absolute chaos, but I'm gonna say that nobody's gonna come out of this with any credit. I think everyone's going to leave the pitch a little bit disgusted with themselves and needing to have a shower. That is going to be my prediction for this game. And yeah, Brighton, Chelsea. Do you reckon Chelsea just stayed in Brighton? There's no point in the players going home, is it? Just stay in a hotel and, just get your head down.
In fairness, they are in Cobham, so it's only down the road, isn't it? So,
very true.
Yeah,
very true.
Not very far for them to go.
But that is the Premier League weekend this weekend. Some pretty big ties. I think Fulham, Nottingham Forest for a hipster's choice could be an interesting game as well.
Yes, I was going to say. Yeah.
But guys, as always, listener, we really appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us. It does mean the world to us. Adam, anything to say before I send the listener home?
As per usual, if you can just give us a rating on your favourite podcast listening app of choice. But otherwise, do your thing on YouTube as well. Give us likes, and if you don't already, please subscribe.
Beautiful. Guys, everything Adam said, repeated by me. Go and check out our Serie A episode. It should be on your feed right now. Atalanta are awake again. God damn. Retegui going for the Capocannoniere. And we'll be talking about a title race where no one really seems to want to win it at the moment. So go and check that one out. We'll see you there. We'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.